there, folks. We're back, and oh my God, in Technicolor. We are here for you guys with a whole new year of unfinished business. I, of course, am your host, Jeff Gallashaw, just in case you're new or didn't know already, or not reading the borders at the bottom. And also with me, as always, is my co-host and director extraordinaire that he wore a hat to let you know, and the man behind AJ Epyx Productions, André Joseph.
Happy New Year, everybody. Good to be here again.
We are starting the year off right. It's a little different. There's not that much movie news, unfortunately, going down right now. So we don't have that much news to talk about, but we do have more reviews for you, which hopefully is one of the many reasons you come by and keep watching. To start off with, unfortunately today, just recently, really today, it has been the passing of classic director Peter Bogdanovich. You know, Peter Bogdanovich is a director. He was, kind of a part-time actor. But he is also known as an authority on movies before Tarantino, where, he wrote books like Who the Devil Made It, Who the Devil Acted in It, which is like interviews that he had with like classic screen stars and classic directors. He'll always be intertwined with Orson Welles, of course, because he let Orson Welles live with him and took a lot of advice from him. He even acted in Orson's last film, The Others. Is it The Other Side of the Wind, I believe is the title?
And he's also in a cameo in It Chapter 2.
Yes, he also, for many of you, you might recognize him as Lorraine Bracco's character's psychiatrist on The Sopranos, the television show. He also has a notorious history in Hollywood. He fell in love with Dorothy Stratton, who unfortunately was slain by her ex-husband, and she played roles in a few of Peter Bogdanovich's films. Also, notoriously always kind of had an independent spirit, so he would clash with the stars or the studios. Like he clashed with Cher during the making of Mask. And he also made one of my most hated films of all time, unfortunately, To Sir with Love To, which I was looking forward to when I was first announced. Then I saw the movie. I can't totally blame him for it, but still, it's there. But he made classic films like The Last Picture Show, Paper Moon, Saint Jack with Ben Gazzara. He also, a thing I don't think he's noted for is he's the last of modern day directors who could still make a good screwball physical comedy, which is why I noticed John Ritter is in a lot of his films, like Noise is Off, which I think is kind of a very underrated film. Maybe we'll talk about it on a future deep dive. You also have Nickelodeon with Ryan O'Neal. They all laughed, again, with Ben Gazzara, Audrey Hepburn, Dorothy Stratton, John Ritter. And unfortunately, there are quite a few films of his I haven't seen that are hard to track down, which is one is his musical starring Burt Reynolds, of all people, At Long Last Love. And I have not seen Daisy Miller with Sybil Shepherd, who was his girlfriend for many number of years. Andre, do you have any fond memories of Peter Bogdanovich or his filmography?
Honestly, not too many. I mean, I'm aware of his legendary status, particularly in the 1970s. He was a big part of the new Hollywood movement between himself and William Friedkin and Francis Ford Coppola. They all had that big deal with Paramount that allowed them to produce their own films with them without the interference of the studios, which, was good and bad, for the business at that particular time. I'm aware of his work with The Last Picture Show, Nickelodeon, Paper Moon. I had seen Mask a number of times on cable, so that's really like the only one that I've probably have the most familiar with. There was what was it, Unconditionally Yours with Rob Lowe, which was probably one of the
Illegally Yours
Illegally Yours with Rob
with
Lowe, and that was
in
like,
Colleen Camp.
yeah, that was like the tail end of the bad stuff he was doing.
Yeah, it's screwball comedy nonetheless.
But I know him more for like his relationship with Sybil Shepherd, and obviously just his whole persona. Like he looked like a director because he was a director, and it was like kind of a lost art in the business is to have those kind of personalities.
Yes, he was very opinionated. Always wore an ascot.
Yes, ascot.
I mean, I'm going to probably bury myself here. I will admit I've never seen The Last Picture Show. I've heard about it over the years, but I've never actually personally seen it. I have seen like some of his last films. I didn't see his documentary on Tom Petty, but I did see The Cat's Meow with Kirsten Dunst, which is about William Randolph Hearst marrying Davies in a murder mystery. That, speculation of what really happened on the boat. That is the one aspect I really respected about him, is the whole film historian aspect of him, because he could walk the walk and talk the talk. Sure, some people might think he was pompous, but at least he could back it up. I really admired that about him. And like you said, he was definitely a personality. So, obviously, rest in peace, Peter Bogdanovich. Our hearts go out to his family and friends at this time. I mean, he lived a good 82 years.
Yes, he did.
And also, unfortunately, we also lost Betty White recently. I mean, I don't really have to tell you guys her resume. You guys know it. I mean, I think the last thing I actually remember, or at least last movie I remember her in, was the Ryan Reynolds, Sandra Bullock romantic comedy, The Proposal, and which, I enjoyed, guilty pleasure, and, even, it was when Ryan Reynolds still had some range. So, I enjoyed it. I know she played a cursing granny in Lake Placid, but I could never bring myself to sit through the 82 minutes of that movie. So, I mean, if anybody cuts a highlight reel on YouTube of her scenes, I'll watch it. Any fond memories of Betty White, from your past or growing up?
Well, I mean, the only thing I grew up with her the most was the Golden Girls, and watching that at my grandpa's house when it used to air on NBC back in the 80s and the early 90s. And I feel like, she was pretty much a national treasure, especially in the later years of her life. She embraced life in a way that, we could all aspire to live as long as she did. It's a cruel blow in this time of year to have lost her just as she was about to hit 100. And they just kind of swept the rug from under her, and that's terrible. But nonetheless, I mean, she's an icon through and through to everybody that knew about her and the work that she had done. She was big with pets. That was a big thing with her, was her charities with dogs and things. So she is certainly going to be a missed presence. I think the world got a little more sadder without her in it.
Yes, and unfortunately, since these things tend to happen in threes, we also lost Max Julien, the Mac himself.
Oh my God.
I'm feeling a little guilty about this one because confidentially, I thought he had already passed. So when the news came, it was like, oh, really? I thought he had already, gone. So it was just like, oh man, he was still alive. And, of course, the Mac, which he wrote also. And of course, his cameo went on probably one of the best things in the movie of How to Be a Player with Bill Bellamy. I'm like, hey, I'll admit those are probably the only roles I can remember him in, because I remember the Mac only being introduced to it shamefully from the movie True Romance, it playing on the TV screen when Christian Slater goes to confront Gary Oldman's Drexel. And then, doesn't have him in it, but I know just from that movie, a lot of people talked about it, that when I was a older teenager, I finally found the Mac, and it is a beautiful film. Great soundtrack. Early role for Richard Pryor, easily quotable, and it even has Roger Stone as his brother in the movie. I mean, that movie is just if you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. So unfortunately, Max Julien, Betty White, Peter Bogdanovich, rest in peace. Lost a lot of legends this week.
We definitely did. It sucks.
So we're going to try and move on to cheerier things, though this next story to me isn't that cheery. Morbius with Jared Leto has been moved from January to April. I was like, I already am not looking forward to this movie, so I was like, let's just pull the Band-Aid off in January, even though, unfortunately, the pandemic is hitting the country very hard again. So that might be one of the reasons behind that decision. I'm like, if you want to hide the fact that maybe it wasn't going to make that much money anyway in January, go ahead. This was one of the few movies where I was like, I was fine with it going straight to streaming. I probably would have watched it just because there's nothing else on. And so I can rightfully talk about if it's really bad, how bad it is. So I don't know. How are you feeling about this Morbius change of a date?
Well, there's two things to this. For one, I'm not really crazy about this film myself. The trailers have not impressed me. The vague connections with the MCU, even though Spider-Man No Way Home kind of, made some explanation of what might be happening. I still think like it looks just as mediocre as the Venom movies. I feel like what's happening is because of this Omicron that now everybody's getting worried. People are not going to go back to the theaters, so they're pushing everything back and hoping that maybe by April or May, things will warm up and then this thing will subside. People will get more vaccine shots, their booster shots, and then they'll probably have a better chance at the box office. I've also heard that there's been talk of reshoots and rumors Andrew Garfield could be in it. I don't know how true that is. He's denying it, but he also denied being in No Way Home. Well, I don't want to get into spoilers yet because we haven't spoken about that. We will talk about No Way Home in a later episode. But I think that they're trying to play it safe, but at the same time, I just think that they're trying to add stuff to improve its box office.
I could see that. I mean, I will admit, I'm going to apologize early for all of the fans out there. My top movies of the year list is not going to be that impressive because since Omicron hit, I, play it safe. So I haven't been going to movie theaters. So I missed a lot of movies, that probably might have made my year end list. And, I'm trying to give it time to hit streaming, but I don't think there's certain movies that I'm going to be able to see. Spider-Man is probably one of those that probably will not make my list because I'm not going to a movie theater to see it. Crucify me if you need to, but I'm sorry. I'm an adventurer, but I'm not that, brave. So, if you don't see Red Rocket, if you don't see trying to think of Nightmare Alley, movies like that, House of Gucci, it's because I didn't get to see them in time. But that's just a side note, rant. Is there any news you'd like to talk about before we get into our next section of the show?
Nothing that really stands out right now.
No rants? Nothing that's been happening recently in film that got on your nerves? And
no, nothing's really drawn my ire. I mean, it's really just been kind of slow outside of Spider-Man. Not too much out to see. I'm like scraping to find new material.
Okay. So we will move on to our next segment, which is reviews. Yeah, we don't have special effects on the show, guys. So we're going to talk about 3 movies in particular. We're not going to tell you in advance. You got to keep watching to see where we go with each one, or probably read the description. So first up, we are going to talk about Pig. This movie stars Nicolas Cage in a damn good performance. It is written, directed by Michael Smosky, and the plot, okay, it's not going to sound like much, but trust me, it's so much more. It's about a man who collects truffles in the forest, and he sells them to, a collector for all these restaurants in Seattle. And one day somebody comes and kidnaps his pig, which is the pig he also uses to find these truffles. And, the pig is basically, other than him selling it to this dealer, the only contact he has with the outside world. And to find his pig, he's going to have to go back into that world that he shunned, which is also the Seattle restaurant community. This film, I know it sounds like a typical Nicolas Cage movie, the way I described it, but this movie is about so much more. It's kind of a revenge tale, but it's deeper, and it's hits the depths that you haven't really seen Nicolas Cage hit, because Nicolas Cage has been willing to take on a lot of projects, and once in a while he'll do a drama, but it's usually these, cheapo action movies, or something that plays on his well-known personality. And here he surprisingly is strong, but underplays his performance, and it's just something of beauty that that was talked about for a while, but might have gotten lost in the shuffle of all these other big movies coming out. But it's definitely one of the year's best movies I've seen, and one of Nicolas Cage's best performances. How did you feel about Pig?
So, just to give context here, like, one of the reasons Nicolas Cage has done so many straight-to-video flicks is because the man went bankrupt a few years ago, and he had to literally pay off the IRS. And when you get into that situation, you take whatever comes to you, no matter how bad it is. And I think along the way, despite some very over-the-top performances of his, he's found some gems, and this is definitely one of them. The way you described it, it sounds like it's a John Wick movie, but it actually is a lot more than that. This is a very underplayed Nicolas Cage kind of performance of, really a sad, lonely guy trying to find the only thing that he has any real attachment to. And in the process of it, he's encountering all these different personalities from his past, and he's, getting his ass kicked, trying to find this thing, going into his underbelly. And, just it's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on near the end, but it's not like over the top.
No.
I think it's really the Nicolas Cage that we remember before the Jerry Bruckheimer era. This is the guy that's like really giving a performance and not trying to be a movie star. And that's the thing that I really appreciated about this movie, was that aspect of it.
Well, when it comes to Nicolas Cage, he's an interesting, personality, obviously, but also it's like, okay, yeah, you did have a massive tax bill. Had a massive tax bill. You're still taking the jobs. But I look at it two ways. It's him getting to give independent directors more of a chance to work with somebody who is considered a star of his caliber, and showing he's willing to collaborate with them. And also, he likes to work, Hey, Samuel L. Jackson has been in some big budget bad movies, but he likes to work. And, he always has that revenue coming in. But just like Samuel L. Jackson, I can honestly say Nicolas Cage is over the top and out there, but he's always fully invested. And, I would never say that in any of these movies. I'll admit, I haven't seen all of them, but I don't feel like he phones it in.
Right.
He might not be as enthusiastic in certain roles, but you're never going to be like, yo, man, I saw that Nicolas Cage movie. Kind of tame, man. Never that. And even if the movie's not that great, you'll remember his performance from it. That, or, some aspect of it, or some interview he'll give where his motivation for the character came from. So, I kind of, because he says the bankruptcy has helped him to find his indie roots again. So if that's what it takes for him to be happy and do what he wants, I'm happy for him,
He's not Bruce Willis, let's put it that way.
Exactly. He's not just there for the paycheck, and he's not there to make everybody else feel uncomfortable. And he's not. Again, I'm not on the set, but as far as I know, he's not pulling any prima donna things. So it's like movies like this that go from where the Bruckheimer era of Nicolas Cage, where you just felt kind of insufferable because like, oh, this type of movie again, to where it's like, you know what? I kind of admire him as an actor. He's out there, but he's admirable. And, I wouldn't mind. I want him to stay in the indie world, but I wouldn't mind him to dip his toe back into studio films here or there. Because I remember. What?
National Treasure 3.
Not that bad. But like when he was in Snowden with Joseph Gordon-Levitt playing a minor supporting role, he was effective. And so stuff like that, or all the times he was supposed to be in a comic book movie, but was only in Kick-Ass. Like when he was
Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, that's voice. I wanted Green Goblin Nicolas Cage, or weird Tim Burton Superman Nicolas Cage, where it'll be memorable, again. So from that, we move on to something a little more satire with the movie Don't Look Up, which is basically a modern day satire on kind of internet culture and culture in general. The main plot has scientists discovering that there's a comet headed for Earth that's going to collide with Earth and will probably end all life on it. But in trying to report this, one of the scientists kind of gets seduced by like television and power and all the powers that be that want him to be the spokesperson, but don't make it sound so bad. Whereas the rational one is, ostracized for telling the truth and being blunt. And we see how this not only affects their lives, but those around them with, you have the vain Meryl Streep as the president of the United States modeled on certain people. You have her son played by Jonah Hill, always has a Birkin bag. You have, oh God, I love this actor, but I can never remember his name. The guy who plays the tech guru. And
Mark Rylance?
Yes, Mark Rylance as a combination of all these tech, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. And I will say he gives one of the best performances to me in the film. I'm going to let you talk about it, Andre, but I have to wonder, when it came to wigs in this movie, since Tyler Perry is in it, did writer-director Adam McKay go to Tyler Perry's wig guy? Because the actor Rob Brown?
Yeah, Rob Morgan.
Why does he have the world's worst hairpiece in this movie that we're supposed to believe is his hair? It's just... okay. I get distracted with that. Sort of like how Jennifer Lawrence's character keeps telling wondering about the general. Why?
Oh, yeah.
It's like
hilarious.
Exactly. And just like that, when I watch, every time I think of this movie, it's like that wig. It also, it's star-studded. It has Cate Blanchett. It has Tyler Perry. I know this person, but I don't know if the world knows her. Melanie Linsky.
I know Linsky.
Okay, as from one of my favorite movies, Heavenly Creatures, playing Leonardo DiCaprio's age-appropriate wife in this movie.
And playing the same role she plays on Yellow Jackets on Showtime.
Okay, I've only seen a few episodes of Yellow Jackets.
It's the same role, trust me.
Wow. But Andre, what did you think of Don't Look Up?
This was a movie that I came out of it not knowing if I loved it or if I just was like, what the hell did I just watch for 3 hours? What it is that for me, the messaging was there. It is a scary movie all the way through. If you're expecting it's going to be Armageddon or Deep Impact, it is not that film. It is just telling you, like, like a lot of satirical pictures where there is something serious going on, but the characters are just dumbfounded and loopy and stupid to the point where what's coming ends up happening. I mean, there's no spoiler of that. I just, like I approve the message that I was trying to say, that we need to take something, whether it's climate change or our own divided country, like whatever is going on that's going to screw up society, we got to take it seriously, because if we don't, we're screwed. I just thought maybe it was a little too much on the nose with its messaging. And that's where I think a lot of critics feel like its messaging was all over the place. It was kind of like, at times the tone was shifting left and right. Sometimes it was like over the top hilarious because it's Adam McKay, it's the guy that did Anchorman. And then other times it got very dramatic to the point where, you want to cry at the end of the movie. And I just think that's where I'm struggling with my feelings of it. Was it Dr. Strangelove or was it Mars Attacks? And I don't think it could decide which was what.
Well, I love the ending of this movie, because I think just like the rest of the movie, it's very blunt. But the problem I might have had with the movie, I think it's a perfectly fine movie, but like you said, I think it tries to hit you over the head. It's not subtle at all, and it does send up this kind of like what we're going through now with, even with the pandemic, this whole thing of, who do you believe? Which side are you on? Don't believe the facts, science, or what you see with your own eyes, sort of like narrative. And I like the inspired turns by the actors and their characters. It's not, well, keep in mind, I don't like Mars Attacks. So I don't think it's that bad. It's not that bad. But I can see, like you said, kind of in between the two. Because there's certain things to admire in this film, but there's certain things that are just like, wow, okay. Like, for instance, Timothée Chalamet.
Comes in way too late in the movie.
And his character really serves very little purpose, other than to be like, hey, random love interest, that's really all he's there for. And,
I did like the Ariana Grande part. I thought she was hilarious, surprisingly.
She works well. It's sort of like his movie, The Big Short. He knows where to put in those little cameos, I would love it if that song made, the best song Oscar list that she sings. That would be an interesting ceremony. But like I said, it's also, I think, the environmental message is obviously close to Leonardo DiCaprio's beliefs and life. And I enjoyed his comedic performance here. Obviously not as subtle or good as Wolf of Wall Street, but again, here he's yelling so much, but it's just fun to see him do that with that ugly neck beard he has in the beginning. And, and here's like the guy all the girls used to scream at in Titanic. And, now, he's like this Midwestern father type, who, spoiler alert, has an affair with Cate Blanchett, who's unfeeling, So I found that aspect, like it's brave of him, or it shows he's growing up or getting older. And another minor quibble, since I'm talking about hairstyles. What was up with Jennifer Lawrence's hairstyle in this movie? It just seemed very random. Like, why?
I think they just want to play down her looks.
You could play down her looks. You could give her a satisfying hairdo. That's my only. Yes, the hair people. Many questions. I liked Jonah Hill in the movie. I thought he could have been used more.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, okay, he's here, and you're just using him to do that. And Meryl Streep having fun, obviously, with her hair extensions. And, the weird ending, the ending after the ending, But also, it's just like, I don't know. Adam McKay has this thing where he's like, I want to make you laugh. Then I want to beat the hell out of you with a lead pipe with the truth. Because it reminded me of, like, the other guys which, you know, is obviously a typical Will Ferrell comedy, but then it tries to teach you about how people steal from pensions. And, you know, even during the credits, you have all these flow charts and things telling you all the stuff. And I thought it worked perfectly with Vice, but here it was just a little too much, not enough finesse, you know.
I also think too that his use of special effects, particularly when they're trying to blow up the asteroid, he's clearly auditioning to direct a Marvel movie because he said he wanted to do Silver Surfer, and this was him saying, "Hey, Kevin Feige, I can do this too. So, you know, here's my calling card for that."
Well, don't forget, he also, before they made it into a television show, wanted to adapt The Boys. And, you know, so, but I would definitely say, check this movie out. Walk, don't run to see it. You know, it's on Netflix. It's not going anywhere. But definitely go see Pig wherever you can. And for our final review, this has been a highly anticipated movie for some. And I'll admit, only really get into the momentum of this movie. And that is Matrix Resurrections. And with Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss returning. And it is written and directed by Lana Wachowski. It's a sequel of sorts, you know. I guess I'm trying not to do too many spoilers here and trying to describe the movie. I'm just going to say I liked the movie for what it was. I liked it way more than any of the two previous sequels, which I still maintain somebody should just take the good parts of the last two films and make them into one good movie. This movie, I mean, it served its, at least for me, it served its purpose. I like that it kind of satirized the fans of the Matrix in its early part of the movie, while also developing to its own thing later in the movie. Special effects are great. Here's my minor quibble. Maybe it's because there was, and they've mentioned this, that there was no second unit directing. You can feel it in the action sequences because they feel, even though they should be so exciting, they feel kind of plain, because there's not that much coverage on it. So it's like, okay, we're seeing it from this angle and this angle only. And of course, since we're in the Matrix, it's going to be a lot of, CGI, special effects. And, I will say the all-star of this movie, who I really liked, was Neil Patrick Harris in this movie, which surprised the hell out of me because I just thought, oh, Neil Patrick Harris, they're just getting people we know and familiar faces. But the monologue he gives when facing Neo in the garage and explaining bullet time, that, was like, to me, one of the great speeches in the movie. Of course, since this is a Lana Wachowski movie, it's very diverse, it's LGBTQ plus, friendly. I really enjoyed it, I feel like it is, to me, I'm hoping it is a final chapter, because no offense, these movies don't need to go on. No offense to any fans of the franchise. But I thought it was good, and I thought it was very subtle of Lana Wachowski because they were going to make it either way. So she only came back so that she could kind of salvage it and end it the way she wanted to. So I like that she did that. And it still has that mix of what made The Matrix great, but it also has this overindulgence on philosophy, but also it has the action, or at least the storyline you want. So I like that. Whereas I felt like the sequels got too much bogged down in the philosophy. And it brings back quite a few cameos and familiar faces. What did you think of Matrix Resurrections?
So I'm with you. I like the movie. I actually prefer it over The Matrix Revolutions, the third film, because I think it had more of kind of just a better ending for me, better closure for, the disappointment of that last film, which I only saw one time, and I just, was very depressed afterwards that this is what we built up to. Um, my feeling with this film is that, yeah, in the beginning, you're thrown off by the meta aspect of it, where it's referencing the fans, it's referencing the earlier movies in its own way. And it almost feels like Gremlins 2 in that sense, the whole like, we're going to make fun of everything that people pointed out the first go around and twist things on its head. Once you got into the real world part of the film, then things started to make sense, which was good. Like, at least we now know how this story is progressing, why they brought back Neo and Trinity, and it's an okay explanation, not the greatest. Jada Pinkett Smith comes back for a cameo, and all those questions you may have about why is there a different Morpheus, why is there a different Agent Smith, all pretty much get resolved by the middle of this picture. So story-wise, I thought it was okay. The only thing that I thought was off was the action. I thought that it was maybe too standard. Like, I guess because we've been so, bombarded with all the superhero movies and Avatar and all these films that have pushed the technology so much further in terms of human action, that The Matrix didn't really offer anything new that that original film did. And how could you do? I mean, it was innovative for its time, and I feel like Lana Wachowski just didn't want to have this get parodied again, so they kind of made the action look familiar, but also just kind of ground it and not go too crazy with trying to, top the latest special effect that they did previously. So that's where I think it kind of falls short in that aspect of the stunts and the choreography. You could just tell even Keanu Reeves was a little stiff at points because of the injuries he suffered on all the John Wicks and all the previous Matrix movies. So, that's that. But otherwise, I mean, I'm on the camp that liked the film. I didn't think it was a complete waste of time. It didn't need to be made, but the fact that we got it just to get that closure and to not see these characters be thrown to the wayside was a good thing. I don't think you need a fifth film, though. I agree with you on that. This should be it.
I will tell you, since you were talking about the third movie, I was so disappointed by the second film, I didn't even see the third film in theaters.
A lot of people did that.
Yeah, I waited for it to come out on DVD, home video. That's where I saw it. Maybe I missed the scope of it, but you know what? I'm not tempted to go back and try and watch either of those two sequels again. But also, Keanu Reeves also, as always, as he does, seems like he walked off the set of John Wick with the same outfit onto this set.
The beard, the hair, there was no change. And that's why I said in the posters, like, he looked very paunchy to me. Like, he didn't really get any serious shape. It just seemed like he wasn't phoning it in. And Carrie-Anne Moss certainly was not phoning it in. But you could tell Lana Wachowski, it was like you said, it was either it was going to be made with them or not. And she decided to do it, but she did it in a way where you could kind of reference, like, oh, we're really doing this. We just made 3 of these that were so successful. We're doing this now. Like, they kind of point that out. Like, there's this sort of, reluctance to go there, but they do it anyway.
Well, yeah, and that's, like you were saying earlier, that's one of the aspects I liked about the movie, is that it makes fun of itself before, anybody else can. So it can talk about like the flying, for instance, they reference that. And, I like the little aspects of that. So I would say, if we were still DVD collectors, some of us are, I would probably get this and still not get the sequel. I'd have the original and then this movie. I just have the bookends, And
I'll say one other thing too. Compared to Terminator, this was one of the better sequels to the original film than the Terminator sequels outside of T2. Because at the very least, This movie doesn't try to do like what some reboot slash continuations do, where they throw the main characters aside to bring in new characters and to make it more diverse, and oh, we're making this for a new generation. No. Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, they are the front and center of this picture. They are still the focus. And, you know, basically it's not all about Neo anymore. It's about Neo and Trinity. So I like that aspect of it, where it wasn't going to be like, you know, we're going to focus on all these new characters and, you know, one of them's going to become the new one. They didn't do that, thank God. It was still them, and they didn't try to like neuter them in any way either.
I agree. Any final thoughts on Matrix Resurrections?
I recommend it over the third movie, but I definitely will say it's not the greatest movie in terms of the series, but it's enjoyable. It's, you know, if you're looking for a waste of time, this is a movie to watch.
Okay, agreed. Well, unfortunately, that ends this episode's business, or this week's business. But as you know, there's always unfinished business to address and to tackle. But first, before we go, have you seen Speed? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome. Andre, what fucking awesome movie would you like to recommend to the people?
Have you seen the movie Lamb? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome.
Oh, interesting. A new release. I like the audience must check that out. And that ends this week's episode. We will see you next time.